John, Anik, and Kenny Florian podcast. John, Anik, and Kenny Florian.
I fucking love them. I can't get enough of them.
Let's hear that Boston next.
Big jab there from Duffy, and Frank Mir is hurt now. Down goes Duffy, out cold. Frank Mir does it again. Rock'em sock'em robots here. Oh my goodness.
Hyperbole.
They're a couple of absolutely self-involved bullshit artists.
Here are your hosts, John, Anik, and Kenny Florian.
Oh, it's so great to be back in your life. It's Monday, March 1st, 2021, episode 290 of the Anik and Florian podcast. We're going to do the entire show today in a Boston accent. Ken Flo, it's good to see you, man. Your hair's looking pretty good. You're back from Washington, D.C., a little south of there, whereabouts unknown.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't tell anybody where I'm at. You know, that's what a ninja does. Hey, man, listen, interesting card this weekend. It's good to be back. We got some beautiful weather wherever I'm at, and good that you're home safe, buddy.
How's your buddy Ryan Hall doing? Because it's a sort of a polarizing thing at this point for mixed martial arts fans, right? Because you and I love the man, right? But a lot of fans love the potential and are just really curious to see him ascend. And it just seems for one reason or another that injuries or COVID or something becomes part of the narrative. And then when he finally gets the big fight that he has sought, he can't make the walk. So what's going on there at 50-50?
Yeah, it's extremely frustrating. He's been very frustrated. Had a bad injury, and is looking to get back in there as quickly as possible. He wants to stay super active this year, so that's the plan anyway. But for one reason or another, fate loves irony, and these injuries and different things are coming about. But I'm hoping that he should be close to 100% in another couple weeks. He's been doing his rehab pretty much every day and doing some light training here and there. He's limited, but hoping to be back as soon as possible and stay busy this year.
And Dan Ige will stay on that fight card. They got him a replacement opponent. All right, well, let's get to headlines. UFC Fight Night, Rosenstrike versus Gane. Ken Flo, to what extent do you think I would alienate the listenership if I did the entire show in a Boston accent today? Seriously, do you think that would really bother people?
I find that most people either love the accent or absolutely hate it. There is no in between with the Boston accent. There's no one who's like, hey, it's okay. It's right. You either hate it or you love it.
Kind of like the mustache.
Exactly.
So I had a media member, and I'm not going to reveal this man's name, but reach out to me, however softly, yesterday and say, hey, I just want to let you know my significant other thinks the mustache ages you significantly. And then I was like, yeah, man, like, thanks, I guess. I don't know. Cool. And I said to him, people really just have strong opinions about the mustache. And then he follows up with, well, I really like it. And it's like, well, are you burying the lead? Because you can say, hey, man, like, I really like it, but my wife thinks you look exponentially worse. Because I do feel like women don't seem to be as on board as the men. And obviously, if I was solely driven by that opinion, I would not continue to wear a mustache on television.
It's questions like that where I respond with a question similar to, what else ages? A slap to the face. And then you just slap them across the face.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. You know what you can do? You can touch your top lip to your bottom lip. Okay, touch your top lip to your bottom lip. All right, so it was Ciryl Gane, about a 3-1 favorite, over Jairzinho Rozenstruik, 50-45 ×3, unanimous decision. What an easy fight to score, because not one of those 5 rounds had more damage than another. I don't want to call it a pedestrian effort, because Ciryl Gane was dominant and he was scratchless after the fight. And ultimately, when you prioritize winning, sometimes you get a fight that isn't aesthetically pleasing to the casual or avid viewer. But Ciryl Gane got it done, and he's going to get a big fight next, and maybe we'll be pushed more in that one. But you congratulate the Frenchman, and I guess you move on.
Listen, there were a lot of complaints about the fact that we didn't see, this crazy fight. The reality is for me, the norm isn't necessarily, what we should expect from every fight, and also what is actually correct. I think that a performance like Gane, that what he gave us on Saturday night was very impressive in that, like you said, he took no damage that fight. Rozenstruik is a very dangerous dude that has knocked out a lot of men. How did it go for Alistair Overeem when he was trying to go for the kill? Didn't go well at the very end. That was in the 5th round. And, I think when you put it all together and you say, all right, I'm winning this fight, let's say 3-0. What do I gain by being more aggressive or maybe being a little bit more wild and pursuing this finish? You make yourself more vulnerable. You don't, unless you have a skill discrepancy, which is significant here. He just wasn't able to do that. He wasn't able to get the finish. And I think that he's still learning. He doesn't have a whole lot of experience. It's not like he's got 20, 30 fights under his belt at this point in his career. But with that said, I think it was extremely impressive. And we can't expect, all these brawls. Rozenstruik wasn't able to be effective because of that brilliant jab from Gunn.
And I know, as you tweeted, when the wrestling and the grappling part of Ciryl Gane's game starts to close the gap on his striking, he has the potential to be a real problem.
Yeah.
And I often think in heavyweight MMA, sometimes you have a guy like Rozenstruik in this instance who is trying to force that one mistake. And Conan Silveira is in his corner, and that's a big part of him philosophically as a coach, right? Trying to force that one mistake. And Ciryl Gane wasn't going to make that one mistake, and he didn't give Rozenstruik that opening. Some are critical of Rozenstruik, and maybe he's critical of himself in this instance for just not being a touch more aggressive. And I don't know. I thought there would be a little bit more urgency out of him in rounds 4 and 5. And for whatever reason, we didn't really see it.
Yeah. I don't know if that's the best approach, because I think coaches should work under the assumption that there are not going to be mistakes made. I think that while that, again, is the norm in mixed martial arts, that we see a lot of faults and mistakes made, you have to approach it from the point of what weaponry they have and what weaponry do you have? What advantages do you have outright compared to what they have? And if you're waiting for a mistake, sometimes those don't come. And I know that I've made that mistake in preparing for certain fights. And that doesn't always come to materialize. So I think that a better approach should have been made on the part of Rozenstruik and his camp. And I think it's a lesson for all of us.
I think that's fair. And you do hear a lot of fighters talk about being over-focused or hyper-focused on their opponent's strengths. Focus on yourself. Don't be afraid to think about your power. And I think a lot of Rozenstruik's mentality coming into this fight, and I am getting this from our fighter meeting, was just about sprints and conditioning and being in shape to wrestle or grapple. I think he thought he was going to get more of that from Ciryl Gane. And for whatever reason, he did not get that because Ciryl Gane didn't really need to go there. And when he did try to take him down, there was resistance from Rozenstruik. I would also inject into the conversation, as we look at this card big picture, 25-foot octagon does not just produce finishes every single weekend, week in and week out. I have said before, Joe Silva wanted this 25-footer for every show, and Dana White wanted the 30-footer to still be in place for the big shows. And I agree with Dana. I like the pageantry of it all. I think the sport is better overall in that 30-footer. And I know I'm in the minority when I say that, but Kemfo, you come up on that fence really quickly. And I hate to, I don't know, you're the expert, okay? But to me, it's like I'm watching. It's like, man, you're up on that fence awfully quickly. It lends itself to a lot of grappling, and especially with the heavyweights, man, you retreat. You make one step backward, you're up against the fence. There's no room to breathe.
I agree with you. I really do. I think that it is a definite advantage for the grapplers because, again, they don't have as much space to move around. And for anyone who expects to just strike and circle around the octagon, if your footwork isn't very precise, and if it isn't sharp, you're going to find yourself up against the cage very quickly, which is inherently an advantage for the grappler. No doubt about it.
And if you're Aljamain Sterling, I'm not saying he can't beat Petr Yan in a 30-footer, but if he had to choose the cage size, he's taking the 25-footer every day of the week. And Alja's got great footwork. And I'm not even saying that Sterling can't beat Yan in a kickboxing match, but you could be sure if there was a choice in octagon, Petr Yan would want the 30-footer to work his tools on the feet. All right, well, we congratulate Ciryl Gane. And I saw my colleague John Gooden suggested maybe a main event between Ciryl Gane and Tom Aspinall. I like that fight, but Gane might be on to bigger things because he's going to be in the top 5 by the time this podcast is posted. I've gotten away from the Boston accent, by the way. That really was an initiative today. I'm going to skip over the co-main event right now. Later in the program, if we can wake Ray Longo in Las Vegas, Nevada, he wants our producer, Cody Merrow, to start cold calling him a half hour before his appearance today to make sure that he wakes up. So Longo's at the end of the show. We will talk about this card and certainly the co-main event, but I want to get to Pedro Munoz and Jimmy Rivera. What a fight. This is twice now, 6 years separated, that these guys have turned in. Just an absolute battle and great fight for the fans. And one thing that I think was similar for both fighters coming in here, Ken Flo, is they are liberated in some respect by the fact that they're not in title eliminators, at least right now. You know, for a while, Munoz had a long winning streak. Jimmy Rivera was like 19-1. And I think it allows them to engage with a little more reckless abandon. I mean, hey, Pedro Munoz has always had this style, and Rivera, I think, in a lot of respects as well. But sometimes I think when the stakes are a little bit lower, you can get just an amazing fight. And both guys went for it. A lot of toughness. This is what it's all about, kid.
An exciting fight, wasn't it? You know, I think that when you look at Munoz and his approach, or if you looked at the way that he matched up against Rivera, Rivera seemed to me to have the heavier hands. It looked like Rivera wanted to get in the pocket, exchange, and hope that he was going to catch Munoz. See, I think he believed that he hit harder, that he was a little bit faster, and that might have been true. But what the calf kick does, it is the great equalizer against someone who wants to box with you. If you are in the pocket or just outside of the pocket, at that range, that calf slicer will mess you up. Why? Because most boxers are kind of trying to sneak their way in, and they're kind of trying to slickly get on the inside and land that shot. The problem is that typically if you want to gain a lot of power, you get very low in your stance. You sit down on your punches, as they say. And as you're doing that, you're putting a lot of weight on that lead leg. The more weight you're putting on that lead leg, the more that calf kick is going to mess up your world. And that's exactly what Munoz did. That really was the story of this fight. Like we've seen so many times, it changes the whole dynamic of a fight. And yes, Rivera was extremely tough and was able to push through 15 minutes and make it a competitive fight. However, he was fighting with one leg, period.
Yeah. And I do think that if you're looking for answers as to how fighters navigate this once they've been compromised in a fight, this dovetails with what Bilal Muhammad told us on these very airwaves a couple of weeks ago. A lot of it really is about mental toughness in that situation, because Jimmy Rivera, he was buckled, man, at the end of round one. And I thought Luis Gaudino did a great job keeping him in it. And Jimmy fought very hard. Ken Flo tweets acknowledging as much over the weekend. Here's a tweet from Sean Shelby, our great matchmaker. Possible calf kick history. Ketel Kubis began teaching it at American Top Team years ago. Wilson Govea was the first to start ripping them in pro fight circa 2010. Benson Henderson and maybe Relic started hitting them soon thereafter. So notice how he qualifies it by saying possible calf kick history, because I'm sure some of our listeners will find some older examples. But what a weapon, man. I feel like I got to know what this feels like a little bit. I don't know if you want to thrust one into my lower leg at like 50%. I think the issue is that people think I'm going to like tear my ACL, right? Because I'm not particularly well built. I am doing some strength and conditioning these days, but they feel like even if you kick me at 50%, if I don't take it the right way, I'm not going to try to check it, Kenny. You know, I want to feel what it feels like.
It's horrible. Here's the thing. Again, like I said, there's the different levels of it, right? There's, you know, if I'm in that low stance and I'm bearing a lot of weight on that lead leg or evenly in both legs, it's going to hurt way more. Or I can attempt to check it where I risk getting swept off my feet. I will take some damage, but I won't take all of the damage, right? So that's kind of the medium level. And of course, the last level of it is just get the hell out of there. Move your feet. Get your feet. Circle out. Either shift your stance backwards and don't get hit with that thing, because literally one calf kick could change the whole fight.
It's so crazy. It really is. Now, there is a segment of the fan base, and this was a popular talking point on Twitter after the fact. And I think it's because we brought it up on the broadcast, actually. There's a segment of the fan base that wants these fucking things gone.
Right.
Can you at least, I'm going to ask you this journalistically, can you at least understand where these people are coming from and why they don't want this in MMA?
No.
Okay. All right. So their reasoning is because they feel like it is becoming just a huge part of modern day mixed martial arts. And I guess, I don't know. It's not just like Conor McGregor fans out there that don't like it. There are people who are like, this is annoying.
I'm sure there's a lot of countries out there that don't want drone strikes, but we're going to continue using drone strikes because we don't care and it's effective. You know, that's the thing.
So a soccer kicks to the head of an opponent who's on his back.
You're right. But I'll say this. It's like, hey, the game has changed to the point where within the rules, within the current rule structure, it's something you can throw. And, you know, maybe I'm saying this because I'm not fighting anymore, but no, I think that it is something that is drastically changing the game. And you'll see a guy like, let's say, a Conor McGregor. A lot of people thought, oh, you know, if this stays on the feet, Conor's going to win. Not if there's calf kicks involved. And it may upset people. And we may not see guys at 100%, but, you know, it's a part of the body that can be hit. And I think, I kind of get that reasoning, but you got to keep it.
I'm not saying it's like 50% of the fan base. I've just heard from a small minority of people repeatedly who are like, man, I'm telling you, it's just like, I got to figure out who's going to be able to attack calf kicks. And then I'm going to bet on that guy because that's basically the sport that you guys are putting out there right now. And for the record, I am not anti-calf kick at all. I'm the guy who wants either a 10-minute first round or just a 1-round fight for 15 minutes. I'm like Joe Rogan. I don't want referee separations in the clinch. You know, I want fighters to have to work their way out, you know, so I am definitely in support of the calf kick. All right. Plenty more coming up at the end of the show on UFC Fight Night. Rosenstrike versus Gane. We'll talk about Magomed Ankalaev, and we'll talk about a fight card that was long on decisions, but not without action. First, though, today's main event challenge is brought to you by DraftKings. UFC 259, you may have heard, is this weekend, and it is sure to be action-packed with no fewer than 3 title fights taking place in one night. I will be in the building, but DraftKings Sportsbook is the official sports betting partner of the UFC, and they're putting you in the center of the action with 100-1 odds on this weekend's title fight on either fighter to land a punch during the title fight. You got to listen to this. You pick either main event fighter to land a punch during this weekend's UFC 259 headliner, and DraftKings Sportsbook will give you 100-1 odds. You bet $1 on either fighter to land a punch, and if that happens, you will cash $100. No better way to put your MMA knowledge to the test than to put your money where your mouth is with DraftKings Sportsbook. And if MMA by chance is not for you, DraftKings Sportsbook offers great odds, promotions on other sports, basketball, hockey, so much more. But I can assure you, as a customer, DraftKings is safe, secure, and reliable. I think I own their stock as well. But you can deposit and withdraw your funds at your convenience and absolutely with confidence. So download the top-rated DraftKings Sportsbook app now. Use promo code AFPOD when you sign up to turn $1 into $100 if either main event fighter lands a punch on Saturday. Place your bet and watch the fist fly this weekend. That's code AFPOD to turn $1 into $100 if either fighter lands a punch for a limited time only at DraftKings Sportsbook. Must be 21 or older in New Jersey, Indiana, or Pennsylvania only. New customers only. Restrictions apply. See DraftKings.com/sportsbook for details. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or in Indiana, 1-800-9-WITH-IT. So, all right, UFC 259. Just a few days away. Let us make some picks.
It's the main event challenge. Anik.
The time is most definitely now.
Florian.
I finish fights. I'm going to do everything possible to win.
The main event challenge. The John Anik and Kenny Florian podcast.
Quick update on the standings. Casey Williams, our famous, fabulous intern, tells me 2-2 last week. Team Florian maintains the overall lead 20-18 as we welcome on the Duck Ian Parker on social media. He is at Ian Parker MMA. So Ian, you don't have a New York accent. Do you think I would alienate the majority of the listenership if I did the entire show today in a Boston accent?
No, I think they love it. My New York accent, since I've been in Florida for a while, has slowly gone away. When I first started with the Florida Panthers, people used to not want to talk to me from down here because they didn't like the New York aggressive manner and the speed. So what I've learned is in Florida, you got to slow that shit down.
Yeah.
And not follow up on sales calls and actually give them like 6 weeks to make a decision on something. So yeah, I think they like the Boston accent, especially coming from you. My New York accent, though, when it goes, it's like a Ray Longo situation, but Jewish. So yeah.
Yeah, you do got to slow everything down here in South Florida, Ken Flo, right? Your expectations when you go to CVS for a pack of gum, you just know it's going to take you like 15, 20 minutes because, average age like 73. All right, so we have got we got 15 fights, but we got 6 selections for you today here. So let us begin in the bantamweight division where the former two-time champion Dominic Cruz is a plus 105 underdog against Casey Kenny. Current form for Casey Kenny, Ian, quite good. He's minus 125 here. Big 2020 for him. 3 straight wins, the last of which came in October against the very credentialed Nathaniel Wood. Your thoughts on Cruz here in the role of underdog against Casey Kenny?
I like the fact that Dominic Cruz said that the ego doesn't get to him where he's placed on this card, which I think we all agree is kind of crazy that he's not on the pay-per-view main card part of it. I think for him right now, this is actually a good matchup for him style-wise. Casey Kenny gets a little wild, but I think the way Dom bounces in and out and takes his angles, I think he could pick him apart and win this fight. It's just a question of, can Casey Kenny really maintain the aggressive pace that he's been doing for 3 rounds and take it to Dom, not allow him to move around so much? My heart wants to go with Dominic Cruz as an underdog. Very not often we get this opportunity, so I'll Dom here.
All right, Ian Parker likes Dominic Cruz, and with respect, this whole prelim versus main card storyline, like I don't give a shit, right? Like Kenny Florian never fought on a prelim. Okay, that I love as the president of Team Florian.
Ew, who does that? What's that like?
Wow.
Normal fighters.
So
wow.
I'm going to have a hard time pulling it together here. But as the president of Team Florian, how much do we fucking love that Ken Flo only fought on main cards? No, we're good. We're good. No, you got a preliminary fight. I don't care who it's against. We're not taking that prelim fight. But in this instance, right, it's like when Dom came back from the long layoff, he was the feature prelim against Takeya Mizugaki. Like, I don't understand why this is some great talking point. You can also argue, depending on the pay-per-view buys, that he'll be seen by more people in that slot. So I don't know. A lot of people seem to want to talk about this. I don't. I'd like to talk about Casey Kenny, because I feel like he deserves to be the favorite here, quite frankly, over my guy.
Well, listen, Kenny has stayed very active. He's got a lot of different skills that could pose some problems for Dominic Cruz. However, I mean, you don't see Dominic Cruz as an underdog in a situation like this too often. And I agree with Ian here that there is a lot of value for Dominic. And the other thing is, you have to assume that Dominic is going to learn a lot from that loss against Henry Cejudo. And I know obviously he was upset about the stoppage, but the approach of Cejudo is a concern. And I know that Casey Kenny is breaking down that fight is going to look to do something similar. If Dominic Cruz isn't able to adjust to that, then we could potentially see another loss. Now, I do think that Dominic is one of the smartest guys in the game. I think he will adjust to that. I do think he will win this fight. And I think he wins by decision here against a very tough Casey Kenny.
All right, so both guys like the underdog Dominic Cruz at plus 105. We'll see where that fight closes. A lot of people feel like maybe Cruz is going to close as a slight favorite, so potentially some value right now. I will just tell you my feelings on the Cruz fight because I'm very close to him. He's gotten the rounds in this time around. So not only has he been in hard training for 3 or 4 months, but sparring is big for him. In this era where people aren't sparring a lot, Ken Flo, It's still a big part of what Dominic Cruz is doing. He needs to feel those shots and he needs to feel those rounds.
He's such a timing-based fighter, right? Where his footwork and timing is crucial to his success. And if he's not getting that in, it will definitely affect his performance. That's good to hear.
And then I'm just wanting to see where his speed is at, because I do think with his style, the figure 8 footwork and everything else, I think a lot of its success is predicated upon being fast of foot. And he's had to deal with a lot of things with his feet, and he's not getting any younger, but I'm excited to see it. I'm anxious for him as a friend, and Casey Kenny, I think, is the real deal. All right. Light heavyweight division. Big night for the 205ers, boys. Alexander Rakic minus 165, Thiago Marreta Santos plus 145. Ian, we'll start with you here. So Santos, I kind of thought he beat John Jones. Okay. I don't say that too loudly, but I really kind of felt like after those 25 minutes, he had won that fight. So obviously the long layoff thereafter, the return against Glover Teixeira was in November of last year, and it did not go particularly well. Thiago Santos is plus 145 this weekend. Rakic coming off a win. What do you think about this one at light heavyweight?
I think in all due respect, I think we have to kind of put that fight with Jones in the past, because win or lose, he would have still had the double knee injury and the surgery and all this stuff. And I think with Glover, we talked about this, that if that fight went to the floor, he was going to be in a lot of trouble, and a long layoff. And I think what we saw to Rakic in his last fight was an improvement big time. And it's now we're starting to see this guy as a true prospect. I think he's dangerous in the striking, the speed. I think also the grounding. We showed his top control against a guy in Anthony Smith, who's excellent off his back. And I think Rakic will have that opportunity to see, you know what? Glover took this guy down. I could take him down, and I don't need to take the damage up top. I like Rakic here, and I'm actually surprised that he's not a bigger favorite in this fight.
All right, so Ian Parker pretty bullish on Alexander Rakic. Kemflo, what do you think?
For Rakic, I think, most of the success of his game is on the feet. And when you have a guy like Thiago Santos with that kind of power, with that kind of speed, that's always going to be dangerous. So I think for Rakic, he's got to take a smart approach on the feet. Yes, I do think he should mix things up with his takedowns and things. Not that he's a specialist on the ground either, but you would have to assume he's going to be better than Thiago Santos down there, who to me showed, not only a vulnerability, but a tremendous weakness. And he's got to be better on the ground. He's got to be better with his footwork as well, because if Rakic is able to get in and get out and stick and move, it could be a long night for Thiago Santos. While Santos absolutely has the ability to get a knockout here, I think Rakic gets the win here. I would be very surprised if this one goes the distance. And for anyone who's hesitant on picking one or the other, not that I'm a professional gambler here, but I would assume betting the under here would probably be the way to go. I'd be surprised if this one goes the distance, to be honest.
We could use some finishes, Kemflo. 15 fights at UFC 259. 10 prelims.
I think Kenny was inspired by the Golden Globes last night. Coming out here as a presenter, he's one bow tie away from being perfect on the show so far. Kemflo's prepared. Let's go.
All right, Kemflo, I'm going to lead with you on this one then, if you're so prepared. Islam Makhachev is minus 330. He's taking on Drew Dober here, who is plus 270. Massive fight stakes-wise in the lightweight division. I'm telling you, whoever wins this fight is going to be getting one of those big names next. Makhachev, 29 years of age, has not fought since UFC 242 back in 2019, juxtaposed against Drew Dober, who had a huge 2020. He's knocked 3 guys out in a row and really coming into his own. Stylistically, this, though, is a challenge that is as hard for most of these guys at 55 as any other. Your thoughts on Makhachev in that usual prohibitive favorite role here, minus 330, Dober plus 270?
Well, Makhachev has had a lot of hype around him, to the point where I think his manager at one point was offering to pay guys like $100,000 to take the fight. I think he was offering Tony Ferguson, I'll give you an additional $100,000 if you take this fight, blah, blah, blah. So apparently Makhachev has had that issue where not a whole lot of people are stepping up to face him. Why? He's a tremendous wrestler. He's also a very good striker. And in a lot of ways, I'm not going to go as far to say he's a more evolved Khabib Nurmagomedov, but with his wrestling background, if you compare both of their striking, Khabib and Makhachev certainly has the better striking. He moves better and just seems more comfortable out there, more defensively sound. And I think for Drew Dober, he's got the right background to pose some problems. He comes from a wrestling background. He's not the easiest guy to take down. He's stocky. It's going to be tough to get underneath him. He knows how to counter wrestle. He hits hard very as well. And he also is a guy that's not going to go away easily. However, I do think Makhachev is the favorite for a reason. I do think he wins this fight. I do think it's going to be a little bit more difficult than we can predict, though. I think Makhachev wins by decision here. I do see some value here for Dober, but I think Makhachev wins this one.
So I've said repeatedly, if you can find a way to beat Islam Makhachev, and like Rafael dos Anjos was going to do in that main event when those guys were scheduled to fight, you're going to have to beat him as a massive 3 or 4 to 1 underdog, and that's what's in front of Drew Dober. But if you can do it, you are on Khabib's radar in a way that nobody really is, right? I mean, what was it? Adriano Martins? Yeah, he was the guy who knocked out Islam Makhachev back at UFC 192.
Yeah.
It's all in front of Drew Dober this weekend. Ian Parker, your thoughts on Makhachev? Any value for you on Dober, or are you on the favorite as well?
I think Makhachev wins. I agree with everything Kenny said. The only thing here is Drew Dober is probably one of the more underrated power strikers in this division. We've seen the power, and we've seen his striking also tighten up. He's also not just brawling. Makhachev in that last fight against Ramos, in my opinion, was a little too wild with his striking. He also gets a little too comfortable, leaves his hands down, and leaves that chin up. I think there's value on Dober as an underdog. I think these are one of these fights where I don't think Makhachev should be minus 350. The hype is fine, but he hasn't fought anybody ranked top 10 to really tell me like, oh, this guy's minus 350 against every guy until he gets to the top 5. Because in my opinion, Dober knocked out somebody that was better than every opponent Makhachev has fought to date in Kelvin Gastelum, smaller version of him, So I'm going to go Makhachev also. On a betting standpoint, though, I don't like it at minus 350. So if you're up going into this fight, I do not blame you for taking a stab at Dober. To Kenny's point, the wrestling defense is there. The wrestling game is there. The cardio is there. And he's got that one punch knockout that could really change the fight. So that's really the best I can give you.
See, it's interesting because Drew Dober's getting more respect from odds makers and bettors than Rafael dos Anjos did. So he is getting some respect, but I'm seeing as high as like minus 550 for Islam Makhachev in what was to be a main event against Rafael dos Anjos. All right. First of 3 championship fights at UFC 259. Petr Yan minus 130. Aljamain Sterling plus 110. We will need the round and the method of victory here. So we did a poll question at AnikFlorianPod, and almost 60% of 4,000 votes or so believe that of the 3 underdogs this weekend, Ian, and those 3 underdogs, of course, Aljamain Sterling, Megan Anderson, Jan Blachowicz, that Aljo's the guy who is best equipped to break through. And the betting line certainly dovetails with that public opinion or popular opinion. Your thoughts on Jan and Sterling? Who wins? How do they get it done?
I want to put bias aside here, but I still like Aljamain Sterling here. I think his ground game and his cardio and his pace will be the difference. We did see Jan get faster and stronger with the striking against Aldo as the fight went on. So we know his cardio is there. However, in the first 2 rounds, if you start like that, it's Aljamain Sterling. He's going to use those leg kicks. And the dude is also a very solid and a very creative, unpredictable striker. And I do think Aljo will get this fight to the ground at some point where he will steal rounds. I don't think Jan's style of striking in rounds 3, 4, and 5 is good stylistically against a guy in Aljo who will not just stand in front of you and bang the way out of it. Aldo really just stood there and was saying, I'll take what you can give me as long as I can fire one back and hope to knock you out. Aljo moves around way too much. I think Aljamain Sterling will win here. It's hard to say if he's going to finish, only because we haven't seen that happen to Jan yet. I'm going to play safe for the moment, say by decision, but I'm going to reserve the right to change that to a submission later in the week.
I'm really hoping our audience isn't hearing all those clicks on your audio. Petr Yan, 15-1 overall. I love you. Don't look so upset. 7-0 in the UFC. 28 years of age, father of 2 young boys. Man, I'm really fascinated by this matchup, Ken Flo. What do you think about Petr Yan? Because it seems like most of the people that I have talked to, granted, Ray Longo is a staple of the show, but feel like Aljamain Sterling is about as live an underdog as it gets. What are your thoughts on how Yan might handle this challenge?
Listen, Petr Yan is absolutely capable of winning this fight. He's a tremendous striker, and I think he's underrated big time in that aspect. I also think he's got some underrated wrestling as well. He's not an easy guy to take down, and being from where he's from, he has a lot of access to some excellent wrestling. So he's no foreigner in that regard. I think that he's going to prepare appropriately. If you're going to fight Aljamain Sterling, you have to take away his wrestling skill. If you're able to take away his wrestling, you have a great shot of winning this fight. Now, I think that Yan, from a traditional perspective, is a better striker. He's cleaner. He's probably faster with his hands. He might even hit harder. I think he does. However, Aljo has that unorthodox style. It's a rhythm that is hard to get a handle on. He just moves differently, and it's just awkward to get adjusted to. And I think that favors Aljo and allows Aljo, I think, in theory, to get out to a good start. And I think that Yan, if he wants to win this fight, is going to have to get it done later in the fight. He did show that determination and that conditioning against Jose Aldo. He did get stronger. Aljo is going to come in tremendous shape as well. And I think Aljo his main attack has to be with his grappling. He's got to use those unorthodox strikes to enter in, take Jan down. I think he can do that. I am also going to go with Sterling by decision. Is he capable of getting a finish? Yes. If he does, it will be by submission. However, I think he wins this in a 3-2 decision. I think it's going to be a close one, but I like Sterling in here to win and become the new champion.
Wow. Wouldn't that be something? All right, co-main event, Ian Parker, Amanda Nunes minus 1165 against Megan Anderson, who is plus 750. So if you place $100 on Megan Anderson, you get 750. And you get your C note back, so that gets you to $850. But you'd have to put down almost $1,200 on Amanda Nunes to get $100 back. Now, I think this is a little wide just because of what Megan Anderson brings to the table. She's 6 feet tall. She only has 3 inches in reach, not all that pronounced there. But if I was to send somebody in there to beat Amanda Nunes, for starters, I would want someone with a great head coach, and I believe James Krause to be that. Ian Parker, your thoughts on Megan Anderson, her chances against the consensus greatest of all time, Amanda Nunes?
I think James Krause is one of the best coaches out there. There's no question. You're hearing him in between rounds, telling them exactly what they need to hear. Maybe they don't want to hear it, but it's what they need to hear, especially when they're down. He's given the right technique. I think Megan Anderson here needs to use that reach, and that's the only way she wins this fight. You know, we've seen her be put on her back before. I believe it was by Felicia Spencer, and it was a nightmare for her. You know, she's good on top, but again, against Amanda Nunes, you know, Amanda's seen it all. I do think the line is extremely wide. I hate seeing that in general because in MMA with these gloves and anything could possibly happen. I just think Amanda Nunes is too good. I don't think Megan's the one to dethrone her if that's going to even ever happen while Amanda still fights. I think Amanda, though, also understands as she's fighting that anyone can knock anybody out. So I think she's going to use that ground game. I think she's going to get that takedown, land on top. I think she's going to get this win by submission. I'm going to say round 2 for Amanda Nunes.
Hey, Ken Flo, Megan Anderson has won 2 straight since that Felicia Spencer fight, which was in May of 2019. So, excuse me, in theory, I mean, she should be in a better place on the ground. What are your thoughts on Megan Anderson, Amanda Nunes, and ultimately who gets it done?
Yeah, listen, I think Megan is going to be a tough out just based on her physicality alone. Amanda Nunes is typically the larger fighter out there. She has not faced, in my memory anyway, anyone who has been as big as someone like Megan Anderson. So that alone is going to be different for her. She's going to have to find a way to be sneaky and get on the inside without taking a big shot, especially in the form of those long legs. A kick upstairs could definitely get it done for Anderson. So Nunes has to be very sharp in this fight. And I think she learned her lesson against Durandamy of not underestimating an opponent and expecting it to go the full 5 rounds, even though seemingly you have an advantage on the ground. So I agree with Ian. She's got to take this fight to the ground, though. This is where she has the largest advantage. If she wants the easiest path to victory, this is where she needs to bring the fight. And I think she'll be able to do it, maybe not early, but maybe in around the 3rd or 4th round, she'll be able to tire Megan out enough where she can go out there and get a submission or TKO win. Let's go with the champ, Amanda Nunes. You got to assume she's still hungry and still looking, with passion to defend that belt. So I think Nunes, let's go round 3, TKO.
And a lot of Amanda Nunes's coaches just talk about the coachability and her ability to not only grasp what they are teaching, but the execution in this chaotic environment. She just has a way. She's just the total package. One of the best fighters, man or woman, that I have ever seen. Speaking of which, Israel Adesanya minus 250 versus Jan Blachowicz plus 210. Ian will need the round of the method of victory, of course. So this is a super fight, champion versus champion. Adesanya moving up, first title defense for Jan Blachowicz. And I said publicly that I felt like there was a lot of value on Jan Blachowicz going into the Dominic Reyes fight. I feel like when you can get a guy who's 20-0 at minus 250 in almost whatever setting against almost any opponent, that there's value. So I will kick it off there and say, I think there's some value on Adesanya in that minus 250 range. Ian Parker, who do you like?
I agree. And I'm starting to learn not to mess with John when it comes to the main events. You just seem to hit them better than Kenny and I do. But also, if you lose, no one cares. Everyone likes you a lot more, too. So that's not fair. But
I don't know about that.
Yeah, I mean, you get a goat. I get a duck,
Hey.
So,
Right.
being called the GOAT, it's a cool acronym. There's no acronym for the duck, and I hope there is not one because
there's an emoji though, and t-shirts.
I do have my own emoji. It's pretty cool. Yeah, I'm gonna take credit for that one. But look, Israel Adesanya minus 250. I do think there is value there. I think this fight may go a little bit like the Paulo Costa fight. Jan doesn't move around a ton, more of a power guy. I just think Israel is gonna be in and out. I think that last fight, the confidence through the roof, the calf kicks, the jab, that left hook, just everything was so on point. He just keeps getting better and better. And unless Jan Blachowicz can get this fight to the ground and do what we haven't really seen and put Israel on his back, maybe for the first 2 rounds, tire him out, make him defend, I just think Adesanya gets this done. I'm even going to say a round 3 TKO for Israel Adesanya here.
I mean, if you've ever placed a straight wager money line on Kamaru Usman or Israel Adesanya, you've hit it every time. Ken Flo, Adesanya, Blachowicz, your thoughts on the main event at UFC 259?
Yeah, Blachowicz, I think, is a larger guy that is dangerous if he hits you. I do think he'll have an advantage on the ground if he's able to take it there. But I see a big advantage here for Adesanya. I think he's going to be way too fast, way too skilled, way too defensively sound. He doesn't get hit, really. I mean, we saw it against Kelvin Gastelum where he started trading a little bit, but I think this is an Adesanya that is extremely intelligent, and he knows what he's doing out there. He has a game plan, and he's got a backup game plan if he needs to. He comes from a very smart team. I think that he has a huge advantage on the feet, and I think for Blachowicz to take to the ground, he's going to have to do something special. I think Adesanya understands the distance game better than anybody out there. He's one of the premier strikers in the game, bar none. I think he wins this, and I think he wins this pretty early. I'm going to go with round 2. I think he allows Blachowicz to run into a strike, and I think he gets a knockout in round 2.
Adesanya by round 2 knockout or TKO is the selection for Ken Flo. Ian, I don't know how, with 2 children and waking up as early as you do, how you stay awake for these West Coast pay-per-views. I really don't.
Because I love this sport, bro. This is my thing. MMA is my passion. I bleed it, breathe it, sleep it. I just don't get paid for it. But other than that, it's awesome. No, you know what? I look at it as it's my time to relax, and I just love the fight. So I'm able to just push through and drink coffee at midnight.
There you go. Ken Flo, any trouble staying up for these East Coast fights? I know the main cards for the fight nights are happening earlier. At least for me, though, when I'm not calling fights, it is an absolute battle. I suppose if I pounded caffeine at 8 or 9, I could power through, but it's a battle.
I'm old, bro. I'm 44. My preparation for these fights involves a nap at some point. Otherwise,
gotta do it.
I'm going to be doing the head nod and yeah.
Yeah.
So when I tweet, it's probably just so I can stay awake, right? So I don't know.
Yeah. Some physician told me on social media that if I can't nap, it's because I'm not trying hard enough. So that's a new resolution for me here in 2021. I got to figure out a way to take a nap. All right. If you would like more Ian Parker in your life, I don't know if people would, but if you would, I'm going to tell you where to go. Well, hey, man, it's not like everybody wants a bunch more of me necessarily, but if you would like more Ian Parker in your life, if you're one of those people, it's at Ian Parker MMA. Thanks, buddy. We'll talk to you next week.
Thank you, John. Thank you.
You didn't like the outro today.
Terrible.
Why?
If you're one of those people, it's like if you're literally that one person that wants to go and check it out. If you're that one person, I got Kenny warming up to. It's funny. I get Kenny. I'm pulling Kenny in, and I feel like you're slowly fading backwards.
Did you unfollow Kenny on Instagram?
No.
All right, buddy. Hey, take care of yourself. Quiet those birds down. We'll talk to you next week. All right. Ian Parker with us here for the main event challenge. All right, we are not yet done previewing UFC 259. Let's get to the pick to click.
Time now for the pick to click. The pick to click.
All I have to do is bet on the winner, and I'll never lose.
The John, Anik, and Kenny Florian podcast.
All right, Pick to Click presented by OddsShark. OddsShark, your source for the latest odds from leading authorities, expert editorial content, and detailed matchup picks with expert in-depth analysis for each game. Their free statistics, numbers, and trends will help you make the sharp picks on game day. Head over to OddsShark and start playing like a shark today. That's oddshark.com. Don't forget the second S. All right, now with us in his customary pay-per-view week slot, of course, sports betting analyst from oddshark.com, Joe Osborne on social media, JTFOZ on Twitter, on Instagram, Paper Chaser Joe, always. I mean, you're like my fucking coffee on Instagram. I mean, all I have to do is watch the first 10 seconds, even if I'm not following your picks. You just get me going like few others. Hey, my twin brother tells me you're on some torrid stretch in the NBA with these New York Knicks first half unders, and some crazy one came in for you the other day. Is that the truth?
Yeah, we're on a grind here, and on a bit of a heater with the New York Knicks first half. There's some really good spots in the NBA if you know where to find them. So they've covered the first half spread in 13 straight games. So Saturday night, they're getting their ass absolutely handed to them at home to the Pacers, and it looks like the streak's going to come to an end. They go on a 23-5 run to close out the half. That's not it, though. Derrick Rose, he steals the ball. He hits a buzzer beater to seal the cover. And, man, that's the most electric bet I'll win all season in the NBA. So just absolutely bananas. It's one of those ones you're in the living room by yourself and you jump off the couch, right? Just because totally unexpected. I was going to change the channel, but I was like, I'll see it through. Right. And, they just went nuts and covered. And it was absolutely bananas. And
I'm the guy who probably had like the ripped up ticket trying to like tape it back together at that point,
Absolutely. So yeah, NBA, we're on that grind, right? It's much different post-football world. When NFL is here, it's the same thing every week. You start your research on the Monday, you do your interviews, you do your picks, you do your writing, you do all your social media stuff, then you watch it play out on the weekend, then you do it all over again for 20 weeks, right? But we're on the NBA right now. We got March Madness coming up. We got Major League Baseball coming up.
I need it.
But first, we got UFC 259, and no exaggeration, guys, from top to bottom, on paper, this card has the potential to be a top 10 UFC event of all time. Absolutely banana. So
I love it.
The prelims on this one would make for a pretty decent fight night card. It's the truth.
A couple main event level prelims. You're absolutely right. I want to start with the fight that I think seems to be most compelling from a betting perspective of the three title fights. And maybe I'm wrong on that, but Aljamain Sterling in most places is a slight underdog right now. Petr Yan minus 130 or so. Maybe you can get Aljo plus 110 or so. And most of the experts and fighters that I talk to, like Aljamain Sterling, stylistically love the matchup for him. And even though I have found some pro fighters, Joe, who are picking Petr Yan, they're not nearly as bullish as the people on the Sterling side. So what are your thoughts on this fight, and will you have a wager?
Well, I seem to be against the consensus of the people that anyway. So I bought Petr Yan stock a long time ago, and I'm not selling anytime soon, guys. So very interesting situation here for Sterling. He's coming off a perfect fight, perhaps the best performance of his career. And it's even more impressive to see what Corey Sandhagen has done since that fight, right? So as a result of that, maybe a little bit of recency bias. Maybe some people do expect a similar result in a wrestler/grappler versus a primary striker type of a fight. But if you pull back here, you take a look at the bigger sample size, I was kind of surprised to see this. Sterling averages just 1.89 takedowns per 15 minutes in the cage, a 29% takedown accuracy. I was very surprised to see this. UFCstats.com, where I do a lot of my research. So very surprised to see that. So on the other side, we have the champ, Petr Yan. He has an 88% takedown defense. And there's not a whole lot, there's no evidence that he can be dominated in the wrestling/grappling aspect of the fight. I did think he did defend the takedown very well in the Jose Aldo fight, who did shoot on him a couple times, and he had no success there. So that said, I do think Yan has a clear striking advantage, definitely in his hands. He's got to avoid those kicks, though, because that's what got Sandhagen in trouble. That's what ended up leading to Sterling being able to drag him to the mat. He kind of half caught his kick and got him to the mat, and we know what happened there. So I think it's going to be a close fight. And Yan did open at minus 145, and now this one's coming down a bit. There seems to be money coming in on Sterling, but I'm going to stick with the champion to retain here, a close fight in what could be the fight of the night.
Yeah, Joe, I think it's going to be a close fight as well, but Can't wait to see it, man. Nunes is a huge favorite in this one against Megan Anderson. How do you see this one? Where's the value?
Well, that's the question, right? Nunes is my pick here, but you need to find some value because minus 1,200, that's a non-starter, and she is my pick. I don't see myself picking against her anytime soon, especially in this fight. Anderson just too inconsistent, really, and I don't think that she does have the skill set to take down the GOAT of women's MMA. So where do we find some value? And I do think we find some value with the over 1.5 rounds. That's coming in at a very reasonable price of minus 115. So Nunes, she's an all or nothing fighter in terms of the length of her fights, meaning they usually end very quickly or they go to decision. So check this out. Her last 11 fights, she ended 6 of them in the first round. 4 of them went to decision, and 1 ended in the 5th round. That was the TKO over Raquel Pennington. The more recent trend has seen 4 of her last 6 fights go into the 5th round. So stylistically, Megan Anderson, I do think she does present a bit of an interesting challenge, most notably because of her size and because I don't think that she's going to engage at the same level like a Holly Holm or Chris Cyborg did. We saw what happened to them when they engaged with Amanda Nunes. It was lights out fairly early into the fight. And also Anderson, not an incredibly active striker. And I do think it might take Nunes a little bit of time to find her range here. So I do like the over 1.5 rounds in that fight. I think that's where you do find your best value.
I don't know if I'm allowed to say it, but I love that, Ken Flo, right? That over 7.5 minutes. I mean, I know I think Kenny picked Amanda Nunes in round 3, but that seems pretty enticing, I would think. I think Megan Anderson certainly can extend her into round 2. And I'm not sure Amanda Nunes, with her sort of force of mistake mentality at times, is trying to dust her inside of 5 minutes. We'll see. All right, main event, Jan Blachowicz versus Israel Adesanya. Seems like, at least on this show, the consensus is that Adesanya is valuable. Below minus 300. He's 20-0. If you bet on him 20 times, you're 20-0. But again, he is the one moving up here, and there's a lot to like when it comes to the Blachowicz side. Are you on a particular fighter or round prop? How do you see the main event playing out, my man?
Well, my best bet's going to be a prop, and I'll tell you why. It's because I think that the odds for this, I think that the fight is much closer than the odds do indicate, and I'm a bit conflicted with who to pick. So in one corner, we have quite possibly the ascension of maybe an all-time great. That's the path that this is looking like for Adesanya. But in the other corner, we have one of the most chronically underrated and maybe the most undervalued fighter from a betting perspective ever in UFC history. And let me tell you why. So check this out. We know that Blachowicz is on this run, right? He's won 8 of his last 9 fights. He closed as an underdog in 8 of those fights, guys. On this run, he closed as an underdog in 8 of those fights. So he's just chronically undervalued. Everyone, we always overlook this guy. You take a look at the striking differential, the significant striking differential during this run he's on. Some of these fights, it's not even close. So I do think that there is a little bit of value on him. You know, we have seen guys go up and wait before, and we've seen it backfire from time to time. You know, Max Holloway didn't look so good when he moved up to 155 to fight Dustin Poirier. Of course, we know the Conor McGregor and Nate Diaz stuff. But, you know, Adesanya probably wins. I do think there's some value in Blachowicz, but as they say in betting, there's no value in betting on a loser. So not a whole lot of interest in taking a side here. But I do like the over 2.5 rounds, and that's coming in at minus 140. So I do think we have the potential for a bit of a long feeling out process here. Reason being, both guys, great counter strikers, so expect maybe a little bit of patience here. Adesanya, I likely don't see him in a rush to blast off right off the bat. You know, a couple different reasons. He's making his debut at the bigger weight class, and even his most recent fight versus Costa, which he did end in the second round. But, you know, he was fine to chip away at leg kicks for the start of that fight. And then you take a look at the champ, it would be a god-awful strategy if he just runs out here in the first round and starts throwing bombs, you know what I mean? So I don't think he's smart enough guy. He's going to watch the tape and he's going to know what's going to happen if he's going to just be in there throwing bombs and blasting off right off the bat. Plus, outside of the Calvin Gastelum fight, Adesanya doesn't really get hit a whole lot, does he? So I think he would be a hard guy to finish inside of the 2.5 rounds. And I do think we're going to see some patience from Adesanya. And Blachowicz, he's a hard guy to put away as well. And you take a look at Adesanya over the course of his UFC career. He's gone to decision more than half of his fights, average fight time at 15 minutes and 7 seconds. So I think we're in for a little bit of a longer fight there. So I like the over 2.5 rounds.
And I love the analysis. It's like when you're playing unders in football, it's kind of hard as a fan because you got to root against points. So everybody's doing well and you're like, oh, you're rooting for a boring, slow game. So I do think it's hard sometimes playing the over, Joe, because you're sitting around rooting for just, guys to stall and run clock. It makes it for a hard view, but I understand why you see the value there.
Yeah, you want to see them pushing each up against the cage, not a whole lot of action. Right. Everyone else is throwing their hands up in the air complaining, this fight's boring. But that's exactly what I want from the betting perspective. They can turn up the pace in the second half of the fight. But, let's keep it slow. Let's be nice and patient here the first half of the fight, guys.
All right, well, you can get more from Joe on social media. Paper Chaser Joe, JTFOZ is the Twitter handle. His show, Guys and Bets, at oddshark.com. Great to see you, my man. You always brighten up my pay-per-view week and a good way to get us started here for UFC 259. And this is a 2 pay-per-view month, so we will talk to you in about 3 weeks.
Awesome, guys. I'm looking forward to it. Thanks for having me on. Good luck to you and good luck to all the listeners out there.
Thank you, buddy. There he is, Joe Osborne, with us for the Pick to Click today. And it's always an interesting perspective to get, especially, I thought, when it comes to the Petr Yan stuff, right? Because if you are judging based upon the film that is out there, this is not a guy who has been challenged in that capacity a whole lot, but when he has been, he has held up. And I do think that numbers are interesting, right? Like, I go both ways on him, but when you talk about Aljamain Sterling's takedown accuracy, I immediately want to see how many attempts he had against each guy and what were the circumstances surrounding it, because that is a valuable number to hear, right? For me, especially at the beginning of fight week, I'm thinking that's something I want to sort of follow up on a little bit,
Absolutely. I mean, Yan is no joke. And listen, he's still a new champion. There's still a lot that we don't know about him. And I think we're going to find out exactly what kind of fighter this guy is when he faces a very tough out in Sterling.
All right, I want to get to a few other things on UFC Fight Night from last weekend before we effort to wake up Ray Longo. So putting a bow on Pedro Munoz and Jimmy Rivera. Pedro Munoz has never been finished in almost 30 pro fights, Kenny, despite a style that puts him in harm's way repeatedly. And I didn't quote this to you when I talked to him, but I did say that after the Frankie Edgar fight, there were people out there who maybe questioned your approach and the hit ability, even though you're the forward-moving guy who's forcing the issue, and it was a very close fight. But, his style really is to move forward, and he does enjoy entertaining. And I think when you can produce like this and clearly win a fight and still win a fight of the night bonus, I just think that for a guy who's had some difficult obstacles to overcome in terms of his championship trajectory in the UFC, I think this win has to be very validating for him. I think in terms of his style, and that even though he takes some damage, he can still be champion with this style, in my humble opinion.
No question. Listen, I think he has found success. I think we could point to guys like, Tony Ferguson and other guys who had that success as well. And is it long-term? I don't think it is, to be honest, because you have a good chin until one day you don't. And I think that's, if you're looking to be in this game for a long, long time, I don't know if it's the best approach, but you can't question the results and what he's had in the short term anyway. And he's looking fantastic and is improving his offense as well. So that's exactly what you like to see if you have that style.
He's always been an interesting fighter for me because of the Brazilian jiu-jitsu credentials, right? I mean, nobody really wants to mess with him on the ground. He's got that absolutely killer guillotine. But yeah, I mean, Aljamain Sterling didn't fight his fight, and Frankie Edgar was able to laterally move and land and stick and move and all that. But I don't know. I just really like both of those guys. I feel like this is like my favorite division right now. When you look at that top 15, 135 pounds is absolutely awesome. And light heavyweight is pretty intriguing as well. We talk about a big weekend forthcoming here at UFC 259, but want to get your thoughts on the co-headliner from last weekend, Magomed Ankalaev over Nikita Krylov. Unanimous decision, 29-28 times 3. No finish this time for Magomed Ankalaev, but it's going to be in the top 7 or 8, and increasingly a guy to keep an eye on, I would think, for you at 205.
Yeah, listen, I'll say this. I think that perhaps his stock dropped a little bit, but I also think that Krylov showed that he is a much improved striker. He looked great in that first round. I thought he did a great job of pressuring Ankalaev, landing some good strikes that I don't think Ankalaev saw coming. And he was giving him a little bit of trouble there with the takedowns early on. Once Ankalaev kind of understood what he was trying to do, he seemed to settle down and started utilizing his own takedowns to win the fight. I thought it was a great way to adapt during the fight. I just thought that Ankalaev would have been a far superior striker to Krylov, and that just wasn't the case. And it's both because I think Ankalaev, or I may have overrated Ankalaev to a certain extent and underrated Krylov as a striker as well.
Yeah.
So I think Krylov is tougher than we thought. I guess I'll speak for myself. I thought, and Ankalaev maybe, still has some work to do, but still an excellent win and a guy to watch in that division, no question.
I really enjoyed the women's flyweight affair on the main card between Montana De La Rosa and Maida Bueno Silva. Went to a majority draw. Nice to see that point deduction in round one. You absolutely have to take a point away. Anything for me on Alex Caceres? Big picture, right? 4-fight winning streak. Now, he doesn't remember this conversation that I had with him, okay? I can be pretty forgettable, I understand. But we were in Manila. It was me, him, and Brian Stan at a bar. He gets knocked out by Francisco Rivera in like 21 seconds. This is Manila 2015. So he's lost 3 in a row, the last of which was a 21-second knockout. He thinks he's done. He thinks he's cut, like it's over. So he has 8 UFC wins since that night, including 4 in a row. And just really happy for a guy who made his debut on season 12 of The Ultimate Fighter at the finale. And it's just hard to sustain and be as active, 24 UFC appearances over 10 years or so. I feel pretty good for this kid, man, because he's stuck to his guns. He's done it his way, and he's coming up on 30 UFC fights here in a couple of years.
Listen, composure and experience was the real determining factor in his win this weekend. His opponent was panicking, was just seemed like he was, I don't know. It seemed like it was his UFC debut, even though it wasn't. It, again, still early on in his career, right? But it was a panicked effort more than anything else. It's one thing to be aggressive and to put pressure on your opponent, but when you are kind of doing it out of desperation, I don't think that's ever a good thing. Your emotions are going to get into it. You're going to get more tired. And it was the more composed Caceres that got it done out there. So it was good to see. I think Caceres was more technical, was landing some great shots on the feet, was picking his shots, hitting some nice counters, and he deserved to get that win.
Yeah, I think you're right about all of that stuff. Kevin Kroom, who trains at Glory MMA Fitness in Kansas City, Missouri, he says, I'm skilled, but I'm scattered. And I still think he's just having a hard time executing his all-around MMA game despite a wealth of amateur experience, and fought Justin Gaethje in his 7th pro fight, supposedly 20-0 as an amateur, but it wasn't clicking for him, and Caceres didn't make things any easier. He's an awkward guy to fight. All right, last thing. Thiago Moises over Alexander Hernandez in the featured prelim at lightweight. And I consider both of these guys friends. Alexander Hernandez was not thrilled with the commentary and believes if you turn it off that you'll hear, or you won't hear, you'll see pretty clearly that he won the fight. I thought it was a pretty clear 2-1 for Thiago Moises for me. 2 of the 3 judges had it 30-27 for Moises. I thought it was the best performance in the Brazilian's career, but Hernandez clearly thought he won. How'd you see it?
Does he think the commentary influenced the judges, or
right? They can't hear us, right? I don't know.
So I don't understand how that works.
Well, I think maybe he heard on social media that people felt like he didn't win the fight, and so maybe he feels like we're pushing a narrative and fueling the public perception by our call to fight.
I should say this. I think he should turn the volume off and watch the fight, and I think he'll find that he actually lost the fight. I think if you're looking with unbiased eyes, I think that he certainly lost the fight. I don't think he made a lot of great choices out there. 2 things happened in this fight, or 2 things happened since the last time both of these guys had their respective fights. And it's that Moises has improved as a striker. Hernandez has gotten worse. And I hate to say that about a fighter, but I don't know exactly what he was trying to do. He throws himself right into the line of fire. He was squaring his body off against Moises, who was landing a lot of shots. And Hernandez, the shots that he was landing, I don't think were as effective as Moises. I don't think that Hernandez had a very good plan against someone like Moises. Again, talk about scattered. I thought that was very disorganized. It was very sporadic in what he was trying to do. It looked like he was kind of shadow boxing from the outside, trying to gauge his distance, and just wasn't able to really get it done. I thought Moises was more versatile and more effective.
I agree with all of what you say. And again, you're able to just see things with a depth that not a lot of people are able to see out there. But I really do wonder if he is able to sort of watch this again and be a little bit more critical of himself and willing to be, that maybe he won't think that this was such a dominant effort, because I think the scary thing for him going forward, the potential's off the charts. I mean, he is a 5-tool guy for me, can do a little bit of everything. And if he thinks this was a step in the right direction, I think that could potentially be problematic.
Absolutely. And again, I'll end with this. I think his footwork is just is really flawed out there. And he's got to improve that aspect, because that's why he's taking the damage and why he is confused on why he can't land the shots that he wants. So if he's able to improve that, he can come back. But I think he's taking a step in the wrong direction, and Moises is taking a step in the right direction.
Yeah. No, Moises really should be the headline, and really excited to see him get another big fight at 55. Moises probably going to get a rank guy at this point. Congrats to the veteran Alexis Davis. What else can you say about her commitment to this sport 14 years after she made her pro debut? She's dealt with a lot of adversity personally, professionally. Sabina Mazo's a hell of a fighter, but I do think the flyweight division fits her a little bit better. Davis just supremely well coached. We congratulate her. And of course, Ronnie the Heat Lawrence, the only finish of the night over Vince Cachero. So congrats to Sanford MMA and of course, ATT Sunrise, Roger Crawl, the whole team, Ronnie Lawrence with a big win and performance bonus in his UFC debut. All right. We don't always bury the lead and bury the star of the show, but that is our reality this week. Ray Longo got a haircut. Let us get to the Ray Longo Minute.
It's now time for the Ray Longo Minute.
I want you to punch a hole in his fucking chest. That's what I want.
The Ray Longo Minute. Starring Ray Longo. The John Anik and Kenny Florian podcast.
And the great Raymond Peter fucking Longo joins us live from Las Vegas. He's at Aljamain Sterling's house right now. It is a championship fight week for Aljamain Sterling, his first in the UFC. It is a title fight week for Team Sarah Longo for the first time since December of 2015 when Chris Weidman fought Luke Rockhold. Raymond, let's go. I mean, what are you feeling right now? Where is your heart rate? Talk to me.
I tell you, my heart rate was good until you started talking about it. Then it kind of went up a little bit, but it's exciting, man. He looks like he's in a great spot. He's got half the team out here, so he looked great today. Great practice today. Great practice the other day. He's looking good. So very, very positive. It looks like his head's in the right spot. But again, more importantly, this guy is domesticated. I am in shock what I'm seeing over here.
Yeah.
The guy was hanging curtains yesterday.
Wow. And that clickety clack you hear is actually the number one UFC bantamweight contender doing dishes right behind him.
Oh, let me tell you something. He's running this place with an iron hand.
So Planet Hollywood Hat is covering up the fact that after over a year without so much as washing nor cutting your hair, you decided to go with the cabbage. Can you take your hat off for a second?
Wow. What? Wow. Look at that. Why would you be covering that up, Ray? Why?
It's getting bad, Ken Flo. It's getting bad in the trenches.
Keeping the girls away. That's why he wears the hat.
Can you put the hat back on now?
I should put the hat back on.
So I know Ken Flo has some things he wants to ask you about Aljamain Sterling, but before we get there, we'll see the extent to which it's hard hitting from Ken Flo today. He's not trying to hit you too hard. No, but I want to get your thoughts on the main event that we just saw between Cyril Gane and Jairzinho Rozenstruik, because if the goal is to go in there and dominate and to progress your career forward, in a lot of respects, mission accomplished for Cyril Gane, but he was criticized despite a dominant win. What were your thoughts on that heavyweight main event a week ago?
Yeah, look, every so often that shit happens, right? I mean, we saw it with the Beast and Ngannou, and I think this was better because Cyril Gane was offsetting him. He was leg kicking him. He had a great jab. So I guess he felt he was just doing enough to win. That's what he decided to do. And he kind of made it look easy against a heavy-handed, Rozenstruik.
Yeah.
But like we were just talking about this too. It's easy to say go forward, but when something's always interrupting that movement, it just 5 minutes seems to go by quick, man. And then you're into round 4 and you have no rhythm. This guy's still pot shotting you from the outside.
Yeah.
Just it had to be a frustrating fight, for Rosenstrike. Am I pronouncing his name right?
No, you're pronouncing his name right. I mean, I don't know what the goddamn racket is behind you, but I'm going to let it slide because it's a championship fight week. But you're right. It didn't feel like an inherently slow fight, even though there was a lot of inactivity. It didn't feel like a slow fight calling it, even though I've certainly called better main events. I know the fight you really want to talk about, though, is Pedro Munoz and Jimmy Rivera. A couple of guys that Aljo got the better of, by the way. Your thoughts on the fight of the night?
I mean, look at that fight. Those guys went after it, right? That's what they wanted to see out of the heavyweights. And I think, again, that's what I love about this fight for Aljo. I think he's just right at the right place at the right time. He beat some really good guys. And you could see, even with, Pedro Munoz and Rivera, both very talented strikers, can take a punch, can give a punch. They couldn't get near Aljo. And that's the difference in this fight. He's not going to stand in front of you and just bang you. He's very intelligent. Plus, he's got the wrestling. You get in a scramble, he latches onto your back or your neck, you're screwed. So he's got, more ways to win, I believe, than Jan. And I think that fight, watching those two guys go out, is a great example of what Aljo brings to the table. You can't hurt what you can't hit. And his movement is phenomenal. And if he keeps that up and does more than Jan, he wins. He'll run away with that fight.
Kenny, I know we had Joe Osborne on the show, and he talked a little bit about Petr Yan and some of the numbers defensively. But I think most people would agree that not only is this an entirely different challenge than Yan has experienced previously, but aren't a lot of points of comparison when you look at his resume in terms of the combination of the frame, the footwork, the grappling, the chokes. Just not much out there in terms of experience that is similar to this type of opposition.
Yeah, Ray, would you say that it's a more difficult fight to prepare for Jan than it is for Aljo? Like, you know what I mean? In that there's a lot of guys similar to Petr Yan, but not a whole lot of guys that are similar to Aljo.
And I think that's the story. That's the storyline of this fight. Look, you just saw, again, Rivera and Jan. Rivera was doing great in that fight. He got caught at the end of the rounds. You know what I mean? And again, that's what I like. Aljo beat two really good strikers, and you could compare those guys kind of to Jan, right? He's a striker. He comes forward, and I don't think Jan's faced anybody, near what this guy brings. I really don't mean anybody. Look, he's kick oriented, right? A lot of times he uses kicks to set up his punches. He could throw 50 kicks around. That's not easy to deal with no matter what. His movement is great. Again, if he latches on to you, and you know how that goes, Kenny, and, you could be the toughest guy around, but when you don't get the blood in the air to your brain, you're going out. So he's got that in his back pocket. I think that's going to make Jan think a little bit. And if he gets over careless, he'll get put down, and I think that'll be a long night for him. So I love the matchup because I think Aljo, that's what I was saying, his growth up until this point kind of leads him perfectly to this fight.
What do you think your emotions are going to be like if Aljo breaks through?
Well, obviously, I'm going to be super happy. I'm happy just that he's fighting for a title, though, man. I love the way this kid's grown. I mean, even the fact, look at it, he's got a beautiful house. He's got a house on Long Island. There's no downside to this fight, win or lose. There really isn't. He's progressing as a person better than I've seen probably anybody progress. I just, love watching him even walk around the house, and he's a patriarch, to these guys too. So super excited, but I'm just super excited he's finally getting the opportunity that he worked for and deserved, and that's really all you could ask for, And if he comes in, like we know he can on that night, he walks away with the belt.
So there are 15 of you. Go ahead, Ken Flossie. There are 15 of them under the roof right now at the Sterling Mansion.
I thought it was weird when I did the show with Matt and I was 50 and I was rooming with Drago. This is to another level. Now I'm 60. Now I'm almost 60, and I got the age went down another 10 years. This is not pretty. I feel bad for these guys. They got to put up with me.
That's funny. Yeah, I was just about to ask Ray. You've been lucky in that you've had some awesome guys come through your gym, and you've been in, some historic fights over the course of your career. It's a testament to you as a coach and a testament to the guys in your area. How is this championship fight different than the other ones that you've experienced?
No, I mean, look, they're all the same. My thing is, I just love to be a part of watching these guys, complete their dreams, and if I'm any part of that, and I'm really happy. So, like again, it's not really different. Like everybody says, which fight would you feel better in? No, it's like you have kids, right? You can't be happy for one kid, not happy for another kid.
Oh, I can.
Oh no, you can't. Trust me, I couldn't as a father. Those girls were all over me.
Right.
So, but so it's great, man. It's just a great feeling being here again, and like again, knowing that we're all part of a small gym, and like again, the camaraderie with these guys is crazy. He's got 10 guys from the gym living in his house, so everybody made the sacrifice to come out to really watch Aljo accomplish, his dream. And then and Aljo does a great job when he's back home teaching and cornering people, so he always gives back. And I think these guys really appreciate, and I think Aljo appreciates, and I think that's part of his motivation. Is really performing for these guys that have helped him out.
No, he is a loyalist. There's no doubt about it. And there are a lot of guys, lesser known guys, that have been right hand men for him, with him every step of the way.
Yeah.
And those guys are going to get some shine this weekend. But when you say it's not different, right? The COVID-19 climate is such that this is an entirely different. I mean, you still have to pass 3 COVID tests to be in the goddamn corner. Okay. So let's start there, right? I mean,
well,
there's
first
a
of
lot.
all, but I had COVID, so I don't even think I have to take the test. I took the test at home, and they said I'm sure it's going to come back positive because I had it a month ago. What 8 weeks ago?
All right,
Something.
well,
So
great.
let's see. I don't know, maybe. But you're right. The COVID, you know what it is, John? At this point, the COVID thing is almost normal. But it's definitely had obstructions to it. You got to take the training when you can. We had, just this whole thing is
Crazy.
It's crazy. I don't even know where to go with it.
Well, but I was going to say, though, in addition to the COVID tests, right here, you have Aljamain Sterling making his first championship walk in the UFC. And look how well he handled that Apex environment against Corey Sandhagen. But again, like I think back to Kenny's career, like imagine if his first title fight, or let's not say the Sean Shirk fight, but imagine if he's fighting BJ Penn in the middle of a global pandemic, right? And there are no fans. I actually think it stands to reason that can very much help an athlete who's in that championship setting for the first time. I hope Aljo's not hearing my every word right now, but I'm telling you,
I'm looking around, but he's not here.
I really do believe that when you're fighting for a UFC title for the first time, even if you're calm, cool, and collected, and you have great mental resolve, like all of a sudden the feature pops and you're walking out for your first UFC title fight, and it's just different. Instead, it feels like Ring of Combat.
Yeah. Well, you want to make it feel like the Ring of Combat.
Exactly. It's perfect.
You want to do that. And I honestly think he looked at the Sandhagen fight as the real winner of the title. So I think mentally he's kind of already put himself there, because look, there's a lot of people think that was the title fight. Sandhagen, they both earned their right up there. Jose Aldo, as much as everybody loves him, didn't earn that right for that title. He coming off a loss. So, I mean, if you look at it, like even logically, it was Sandhagen against Aljo for the bantamweight title.
Yeah. All right, 2 things before we let you go. Did you see the lightweight fight last weekend between Alexander Hernandez and Thiago Moises?
Yes.
So Factory X has a ton of up-and-coming contenders in a bunch of different weight classes. I think highly of Mark Montoya, but Mark and Alexander Hernandez seem very surprised that they didn't win this fight. And my question for you, I guess, has to do with that part of it, that it seemed like most people believe Thiago Moises won that fight. Alex suggested if maybe you mute the commentary that people would think it went differently. But I thought it was pretty clear 2-1 for Moises. 2 of the 3 judges gave it to him 3-0. And it seemed like Alex and his head coach felt like they were watching a totally different fight.
I had Moises winning that fight kind of easy. When we were watching the fight, all of us on the couch were in shock that even Hernandez put his hands up. I'd have to really talk to Mark. I don't know if he's more supporting his guy, but I thought it was a bad sign. You couldn't have possibly thought you're winning that fight. I just didn't. The other guy looked way sharper. Way sharper.
Well, Mark went to Bruce Buffer and almost leaned over to try to look at the scores as if to say, are you sure you read that for the right guy? And perhaps Mark's reaction was because there were 2 30-27s. But if you were to give one of the two fighters all 3 rounds, I think it would have had to have been Thiago Moises. But I think
I'm surprised you're even saying that. I really thought whoever I was watching the fight with, everybody knew that Moises won that fight. So sometimes I guess when you're emotionally involved, sometimes you see it different. Because look, it wasn't the most exciting fight, but like one guy was controlling the octagon for sure, and I think they put up the punch stats. He was ahead in every round, if I'm not mistaken, or maybe the other guy had more kicks. Was that it? Maybe that's what the problem was.
Right.
Yeah. I'm not really sure, but I thought one guy looked like he was definitely in control of that fight.
Yeah. Well, anyway, we got 3 title fights this weekend, so enough about that noise. My final question to you is Israel Adesanya, Jan Blachowicz, main event this weekend. Wicked, compelling light heavyweight championship fight. Champion versus champion. Who do you have? How close a fight is it going to be? Talk to me.
If Jan can impose his physicality, I mean, I don't know. I mean, obviously the other guy's he's a sharpshooter. He's fantastic. And, it's going to be, does he have light heavyweight power when he moves up too? Because he's more of a technician, but he does come out of nowhere with stuff, which obviously adds to the power. But, and is he going to be able to hold up? I don't know. This guy's big and strong. I'm very excited for that fight, but I think Adesanya technically, he's definitely the better technical striker. The other guy he does look like he's got some Polish power, man. He's put some. Look what he did to Reyes, man, who nobody had done that to him before. So,
right.
Man, what are the odds on that fight?
It's like minus 250 for Adesanya. Jan is around plus 200. Will you be placing any straight wagers or parlays this weekend?
No. I'm just betting on my guy. That's it.
Just right in your hat.
I'm taking the plus 135.
You can't find plus 135 on Aljamain Sterling anywhere in Las Vegas right now. Where's that price?
I saw that the other day because they made
me. If you can get that price, let me know.
Yeah, can you?
Oh wow! I swear to God, I saw that the other day. Betos.com.
All right. Well, we here at the Anik and Florian podcast would always encourage you to go shop a price, but that would be a stale line. I don't know that that's available anymore. Maybe it is, but he's more plus 105, plus 110. Wow. So either way, it's plus money, and you're in a city in which sports betting is not only legal but encouraged. So maybe you should make your way to one of the kiosks and,
I think I'll be doing that.
All right. Well, congratulations on the haircut and everything else you got going on. It really is a testament to you, though, to Kenny's point that you have endured, sustained, and cornered championship-level athletes in the greatest show in the world in 3 separate decades. So
I got to tell you,
to you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Because listen, I'm grateful for everything. I love these guys. I love watching them, become successful in all aspects of life. But it has been a crazy ride, man. I got to say, it really. I don't even know how I'm doing it myself.
Yeah, right.
It's been a long ride, but this will be a really great send off, maybe.
Well,
I think I write off into this guy wins the title. You might never see me again. I just might get on a horse and just keep on riding.
Well, got to be back for title defense #1. But would that be a great way to go out, or what, for Raymond Peter Longo? Well, I'm going to try to keep the emotions in check if you guys break through this weekend. But I'll be inside very happy for you.
Hey, my man. John, you were always Aljo's biggest fan from 6 years ago. That's
when he was fighting the Johnny Eduardos of the world, right?
Exactly. What happened to those poor guys?
Aljo.
They're in the gulag right now.
Yeah.
You got sent to the gulag.
That's right.
Hear about them.
That's right.
Kenny, it was awesome, buddy. I want to say that. You know what? Your hair actually got better since the beginning of the podcast. This is crazy. John, what did he do? Did you spray something on there to fluff it up in between?
His microphone is muted, but I think he's talking about product.
Very good.
Ken Flo, you're muted. We can't hear you.
I was going to say, guys, good luck to you guys. I can't wait to watch the fight. It's going to be really interesting, and best of luck. I know you guys are going to do great.
Yeah, and it looks stylistically, man, it's an exciting fight at the end of the day.
Oh,
So
yeah.
I think I expect Aljo to rise to the occasion the same way he did with Sandhagen. That's what I expect. And he's healthy. He looks great. He has a good week this week. It's just training. He's ready to go.
Have fun
All
out
right,
there.
well, we will be back with you next Monday. Will we be celebrating another undisputed UFC championship for Team Ray Longo, or will it be Russia's Piotr Yan spoiling the part? No, I'm just kidding. Sorry, I'm just trying to keep it trying to keep it objective over here.
Crap, did you just lost yourself? What happened?
All right. Piotr Yan
He saved that up.
is 8-0 in the UFC.
Wow.
I'm just kidding. I'm totally
I don't have a
kidding.
boo sound effect, or that would be playing right now.
I know. Right.
All right. So wait, are we hooking up when you're out here or no? What are we doing?
Yes, it'll be a little bit of a tricky navigation because we're at different hotels, and you're. I guess you don't have to get tested, so we'll see what we can do. But we will at least have a conversation in the parking lot, and please send Aljamain the best from, of course, the legend Ken Flo and myself, and
certainly will.
Stay healthy and try to get this done, Raymond.
Yeah,
try to get this done.
Man.
Go get it, boys.
How many more sleeps? How many more sleeps we got?
We got like 5 sleeps, bro.
5 sleeps.
I think I got that wrong. It's actually 6 fucking sleeps.
6 sleeps.
Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. No, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. It's 5 sleeps.
5 sleeps to gold. That's it.
5 sleeps to gold.
Let's go.
It's 6 sleeps and counting the one that John needs to take now to recover.
Right. Can you tell I hit a red eye and I'm hurting for certain? All right. Hey, we're back next Monday. Ray will be with us, win or lose, because he's just that type of guy. Thanks to everybody for listening. Don't forget merchandise, including Ray Longo Minute merchandise, available right now, AnikFlorianPodcast.com. Thanks to our executive producer, Cody Merrow, Ian Parker, Joe Osborne, everybody else. We will talk to you in less than 7 days. Until then, for Ken Flo and Ray, John Anderson, so long for now. Yo, fucking later. Tell your friends. Let's go, Aljo.